Laugh, laugh. We're silly people. All right. All right, guys, intermission is almost over. This is People's Rights Washington, and we are live with KrisAnne Hall and JC Hall here in Clark County, where we are hosting a constitutional event. And we have the amazing Vicki Heacock with Freedom DJs, who is doing all of our sound, and we're going to get started. The first video that we did, because we like to keep everybody on their toes, the first 2-hour segment of KrisAnne's teaching was on John Lamb's page on Facebook. So if you want to hear the first half of our night, you'd have to go to Facebook and look up John Lamb, and then you can see the beginning. We just stopped for dinner, and now we're about to get started again. So I just wanted to share the love and use as many pages as I could. No, that does not mean that John Lamb is here or Ammon Bundy is here. We are simply using different platforms because I have been deplatformed from Facebook and Instagram. So we are making do with what we have. So we're going to be started. It's going to be just a minute, guys, and we'll get started here. So I'm going to go ahead and go live before we start. And again, go to John Lamb if you want to see the first half of our event. So we just stopped for dinner, and we've got Sheriff Songer here with us from Klickitat. We are very honored to have him with us here, learning about the Constitution and our rights, and it's been a good night. So I'm going to plug this phone in and get it back up on the focused on the stage. And again, if you guys want to see the first half, feel free to hop on over to John Lamb's page. If anybody can share this in Telegram, I would appreciate it. All right, let's start making our way back to our seats. Our way back to our seats, and while you are, I will briefly just say where you guys can find us if you want to connect with people in your area through the People's Rights Network. It's not an organization, it's just a network, literally of phone numbers that people have reached out saying, I just want to connect with my neighbors and learn about my rights. So you can find us most readily on Telegram at People's Rights Washington. That is until Mark Zuckerberg buys it and deplatforms us, like he has done on many other platforms. Instagram is also owned by him, so we lost that platform as well in October. So Instagram is the best place to find us. We have a website, peoplesrightswashington.org. What? Telegram. No, I said we lost Instagram because it's co-owned with Facebook. So we were kicked off of all platforms. So we can be found on Telegram, People's Rights Washington, or on the website. It's on the website, peoplesrightswashington.org. You can message the page and find out about events. We're just getting it going, so bear with us. I think that's everything. Oh, and then to join, no, we are now back up and going on the text system. Even if you don't have signal, we can still send you a text. It's a little bit slow because there was some limiting and censoring. We used to be able to send it out with like 8 to 10 numbers. None of you need to know this detail, but when we send a message out, 8 to 10 numbers were rotating being used, and they've reduced us to 1. So it's a lot slower unless it goes through Telegram. Sorry, unless it goes through Signal. So text the word rights to 80123. It's right there. Text rights to 80123. This keeps shutting off. 600. So text the word rights to 80123 if you want to just get into the network, and then people will send out a message either on your phone or Signal. If you didn't download Signal, you will still get the text. It's just slower for us. It costs more money. So if you could download Signal, that would be great. And if not, you'll still be able to reach people by texting the word rights to 80123. And now, what's that? It's nationwide, so anywhere that you guys are at. And now we have KrisAnne Hall. And we have more half and half coming. I'm sorry for the coffee drinkers. It'll be back here in about 15 minutes.
Hey everybody, how was that food? Yeah, pretty good stuff. Everybody give them a hand, say thank you for the food. That was really great, wasn't it? take just a second to encourage everybody. You're here, right? You're here because you have a common desire. And you also have a relationship with each other that ties you and binds you in some way you wouldn't be here. So please do not leave here without confirming these connections so that you can meet again. This is what community is all about. You see, we are a constitutional republic, so we don't have to stand alone. And we have to choose again to stop looking at Emerald City in Washington, D.C. to fix all our problems. We have to choose to become a community of like-minded, like people. Remember, organize in unity. So, we are going to play for you the trailer for our non-compliant movie, like I promised. Here you go. We hold these truths to be self-evident. That all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. We have a power. And we've raised a spoiled, brat representative government that needs to be taken to the woodshed. Are you satisfied with the government that owns you? There are churches who refuse to allow us to use their facilities to teach.
Unspoken or even sometimes spoken rule that religion and politics don't mix. You wouldn't dare speak out against the government or somehow resist.
Christians have to be involved in politics. God commands it.
Every turn of event through history hinged
One person will stand up,
upon a single person.
and then everybody else will stand.
A gym member, surrounded by a crowd of supporters, was placed in handcuffs.
A Tampa Bay pastor has been arrested, sentenced to a week in jail. She also tore up a cease and desist letter.
We have a posterity waiting for us to say, we will not comply, so you will be free. You have a chance to fight without bloodshed. But every time we comply, we establish a future where our children will not have that option.
Why do we sit down when all should be standing? And why do we back down?
Ladies and gentlemen, non-compliant, the movie. So we're going to switch back over. How many of you are willing to share that with at least 5 different people? Now, this is a non-profit film, which means your donations at noncompliantmovie.com are tax deductible. And we are trying to raise money to not only pay for the production, because Viram Films have agreed to create the film without funding up front. They believe so much in what we're doing. But we also need to raise funding to distribute the movie, so we can get it into big places and show it to big audiences. And then we need to raise money because Viram Films is so excited about what we're doing together, they want to make this an educational series. So they already see number 2 in the platform. So I've been receiving a lot of questions. Before I get JC up here, I want to show you up here. This is our website, KrisAnneHall.com. Okay? You see this little button here, calendar. And you click on here, you see my calendar for the entire month. I'm not very busy, am I? And then, no, that wasn't me. Okay, So then if you want to come to Salem, or you want to go to Salem here, or we are going, anybody in Sisters, Oregon, on Monday. We will be in Sisters, Oregon on Monday night. So Salem on Friday, Saturday, back here in Washington on Sunday, and then Sisters, Oregon on Monday. But then, you're all on social media, so you have people all over the country. So here's Naples. And then the other thing that has come up a couple times in March, we have our annual gun Constitution/gun training program. This is something that we do annually, and it's called In Defense of Liberty. See that down here? So you click on here. In Defense of Liberty, we're really close on the wire now, is March 12th through 14th. It is Constitution training, it is hand-to-hand self-defense, it is handgun accuracy and precision, and real-world shooter defense. Our trainer is Larry Stevenson. He also goes by the name of the Bearded Black Cowboy. Larry is the premier firearms trainer, if not in America, in the world. He trains Navy SEALs, and what we do is so unconventional that you will receive real-life training. And we have families. We've had 8-year-old, 16-year-old, 60-year-olds, all in this class. On Friday, we have an incredible Constitution training and meet and greet, so you get to meet everybody. On Saturday and Sunday morning, we meet in Larry's gym. He is a jiu-jitsu master who was taught by the Gracies. So anybody that knows anything about that, that means something to you. He was actually taught by Daddy Gracie. So we'll be in his dojo Saturday and Sunday morning learning hand-to-hand self-defense, weapons retention. We'll even learn some jiu-jitsu on that kind of hand-to-hand self-defense. And then Saturday afternoon and Sunday afternoon, we're on the range. Now we shoot paper targets, but that's not just it. We don't stand like this. This is an outdoor range. We shoot behind our arms, between our legs, laying on the ground, rolling on the ground. We fight and shoot. We shoot from things like cars, learning how to escape a carjacking. We learn how to escape being kidnapped. And Larry has promised this year, in this class, he is making available to the public through our class for the first time ever, training that he usually only makes available to private clients. And so if you go to KrisAnneHall.com, I'll take you back to the thing and show you. If you go to KrisAnneHall.com, click on In Defense of Liberty, more options, you can see all of the options to take this class. It is a 3-hour class. It would be nice if you can, pardon me? 3-day class. Did I say 3 hours? Yeah. No. 3 days. 3 days. You can bring your own firearms. You will have to supply your own ammunition. But if you don't have a firearm to bring, we have lots of firearms for you to use. But I wanted to, because several people have asked me about Texas training, asked me about this, I wanted to let you guys have that information. And so now, it is it's in Whitesboro, Texas, which is just slightly north and east of Dallas. So all you have to do is fly into Dallas. It's about an hour drive. And then you, or take a road trip and drive. Or find a pilot in your Liberty Commerce that will fly you. Right? And so those are the things that we have available to you. It's in Whitesboro, Texas. If you're interested and you don't think you're going to be able to make it in March, we're going to be holding another class in September. But different things are taught in every class. We have people, we've been doing this for 4 years now, and we have people that come every single year, because every single year they learn something. So now it's my pleasure to introduce my husband, J.C. Hall. Now, J.C. is a former Russian linguist for the U.S. Navy. Go Army. He worked for the NSA back when they spied on other people and not Americans. And JC and I actually met in the military because he was my Russian instructor. Which means I got to be the teacher's pet. I was his favorite student. JC is also a former pastor at our church for about a decade, a missionary to Haiti. We used to take, and there's a couple people in here that have followed us this whole way. We used to take sailboats from the coast of Florida and sail down to the southern coast of Haiti, bringing aid and building churches and stuff like that down to Haiti. That was an adventure all in of itself. Sailing for 6 to 8 days on the big blue. And now JC is an instructor at the River School of Government at Ripper University in Tampa, Florida, under the leadership of Dr. Rodney Howard-Browne, where I am also a professor. And JC is also traveling and teaching with our ministry here, which we've been doing for 11 years. And so I want everybody to give a warm welcome to my husband, the smart half of the group.
All right, wonderful. Wonderful. Appreciate you guys being here. Powered up, ready to go. All right. So when I joined the military, joined the Navy in 1990 to become a Russian linguist, learn Russian. Went back to talk. I was an instructor there at Defense Language Institute, and so I've been as part of that, or because of that, I've been pretty well studying communist history, history of the Soviet Union, history of communism, socialism system. So for about 30 years, I've been studying this thing. Now teach a class, teach a course at the River School of Government on socialism. So eight-week, really kind of a part one, 8-week courses of sort of the Marxist focus on socialism. Socialism is larger than Marxism, but sort of primary focus on that part. We get to a second half that goes another 8 weeks probably. So obviously, in about an hour, this is going to be a real overview, condensed. We want to hit some important parts. I'm a firm believer that it's difficult to defeat what you can't define. And this is one of the problems that we have faced in this realm of socialism, and I'm afraid not just with our liberal friends. I have noticed in the last year especially, it really come to my attention, I think especially starting, Dr. Rodney wrote the book Socialism Under the Microscope. He started teaching the course and just really digging into the history and getting the full broad sweep of socialist history. And then I guess my ear was attuned and people were asking questions and making comments, and I thought, wow, we don't get it either. So I want to lay a couple of key things, because you're probably you probably have a good broad understanding of socialism. I have no doubt about that. So I don't have to dig into everything, because you're familiar and you understand a lot of things. But I think there'll be a couple of critical things maybe to give you clarity. Some of you probably already get it. But maybe there'll be a couple aha moments, and you can help your friends and bring clarity to what's going on. And then we're going to, so some of that's historic, some of that's the principles of this thing, but then we want to touch on some right now. We're going to bring you up to modern times, not just a history lesson, but some things that are going on right now and where we're headed. And hopefully this will inform how we fight back, how we approach this. I know, like, fight's a dirty word now, right? How many love? What's the guy, Vander? You need the keys? I'll give you the keys. What's the guy? The attorney, Vanderveen? What is his name? Vanderveer. Man, what a superstar, huh? I don't know if you've seen his smackdown. I think it was CNN journalists when they tried to interview him. That was great. And his little mic drop on, boom, the citizen. Right? He's like, I'm not one of you. I'm not a politician. This is not some script. This is not, this is whatever. It's not a PR. I'm just speaking from the heart of a freaking American. And just, boom, mic drop. I was like, man, I love that guy. But how'd you like that video? So if you didn't watch any of the impeachment, which I don't blame you, I wouldn't. But if you watch any of it, day 4. And when they rolled out the videos and all the illegal doctoring of evidence and all that stuff, in that video of them saying fight, all the same ones that were pitching their claptrap about, inciting a riot and all that nonsense. And they were just, man, I think that thing seemed like it went on for 40 minutes of all the accusers saying the same stuff that they're trying to castigate the president for saying. Yeah. So anyway, hopefully this informs you on how to fight this nonsense, this garbage. Big threat. I just keep crunching something and struggling on. But this is a big fight. Amen? I mean, this is really the broad framework of what we're fighting. The framework of socialism that, they already think we're kooks, so I'm just going to speak plainly right now. Okay, I don't know where we're streaming. I don't really care. But the socialist framework, it's the tool, it's the framework, it's the pretense that the globalist cabal uses to try to enslave humanity. So this, I'm gonna go get a broom in a second. What am I?
It's the floor.
What am I crushing?
It's the floor. It's just cracking.
It feels like seashell. It's like running up and down my spine. Anyway, so socialism has a huge history, a long history. I feel like people think it was invented in 1917, the Russian Revolution. But long history. We could go all the way back with Thomas More's writing, way back, what is this? 1516, this first kind of notion, the first literary mention of utopia. In this, you can go even farther, right? You can go way back as far as conceptually of people writing and talking about this. So we could go even farther back than this timeline. I wanted you just to get a sense of, we're talking about a broad history. Socialism has a deep history, a broad history, and then there are branches. There are streams that peel off that people are even unaware of. Marxists, I'm just joking. You don't have to do this. I'm just kidding. Oh, come on.
I think it's the floor. It's the floor.
What a servant's heart. Amen.
Yeah.
What a blessing. I felt like I dropped some seashells out of my pocket from Florida and was crunching them or something. Anyway, so there are lots of branches, and it's a big, long history. So we're not going to dig into everything tonight. We couldn't possibly do that. But there is this progression, and the idea of utopia really is the sort of umbrella perspective. All this flows out of this, I think of it as almost juvenile.
Absolutely.
Right? Like the fantasies of an elementary school student. Which is, it's so laughable when I read some of these communist and socialist intellectuals who were supposed to be the smartest and the brightest, Bernstein, Lenin, Marx, all of it. And when you actually dig in and start reading their writings, how they're explaining all this, it's such utter gobbledygook. They're supposed to be so smart, and it sounds so ignorant, so stupid. I don't know what else to say. It's astounding to me. Which leads me to think it can only be devilish, right? It can only be demonically empowered. It is astounding to me how this ridiculous notion has spread all over the planet when you examine it with half a spoonful of common sense. It looks so idiotic. I was shocked when I first decided to pick up. I'm studying through and I found out, Edward Bernstein was, the protege of Marx, and he's supposed to take over now that Marx is gone, and Lenin swooped in when Bernstein started having doubts about Marxism and said, oh, we gotta get rid of this guy. And I started reading Bernstein's, 300-400 page whatever. And I thought, this is Marx's protege? This guy's a moron. So it's really shocking. It's really shocking. I encourage you to read some of the stuff. It's so ridiculous. I almost want to hand like those silly college students who get brainwashed. I almost want to say, okay, just forget what your professor said. Here's Bernstein's writings himself. Let's read through that. Right? Because that's one of the techniques that happens. And why we try to teach the way we teach, we always emphasize what's known as original source or first source material. Like history and historians used to operate on this principle of first source material. It's not a book about the people, a book, like a history book about what the people did, what the people said. Go read what the people who actually lived through it wrote and said, right? Go to the source. And what happens in our colleges, the students aren't actually reading Marx. They're not actually reading Engels. They're not actually reading Bernstein's stuff. I don't think that would be profitable for them. Because the kids would be like, okay, this sounds dumb. They get the professor's twisted, propped up version, right? And then you graduate and you get a job and you see the money coming out of your paycheck and you go, that's not fair. Because they were never actually presented like, here's how they said the system should work. It's sad. That's why it's not education. It's brainwashing. Hello? Are you with me? Yes. I'm not afraid. I'm never afraid of subversive information. When some groups would come knock on our door and I don't share your particular religious view or worldview, I didn't go hide in the closet. I would go, come on, yeah, I want your book. Yeah, give me that literature. And I would read it. Because then I see what they're saying. I see the misinformation. I see the problems. I want to examine. I'm not afraid of that. I think our kids would do better reading the actual Communist Manifesto. Let's actually go line by line through the literal Communist Manifesto, not Professor Nitwit of Harvard's book about what he or she thinks socialism is. Let's go to the actual idiots who devised the scheme and see how they describe it, and then maybe you'll finally learn what it really is. I'll tell you, almost tongue-in-cheek, before we ease farther into this, and I know we're nonpartisan, so let me say this, when a certain lady was running for president, what? Like there's only been one lady to run for president? And then she had a competitor, within her own primary that many considered, crazier and farther to the other direction than her, who actually had socialist in his platform's name. I said at the time, the best case scenario in this election is that he would be the one to win. he would get that party's nomination and he would be elected. What? Are you crazy, JC? You want a socialist as president? Yeah, kind of. It'd be good because they would finally learn what they're clamoring for. He'd be the guy to burn it down the fastest, and we could finally get over this nonsense. They'd finally realize this is crap. It doesn't work. You're all going to be poor. The promises are fake and false. So now you've had your 4 years of this lunatic. Can we please get past this socialism nonsense? Right? The problem is we'd have to suffer through the consequences of that nitwit being in that office. But I really thought at the time, let's just rip the Band-Aid off. Let's just let him be president for 2 years and let all these brainwashed college students finally figure out what they keep begging for. Are you with me? You know what I'm saying. I mean, I don't want complete hell on earth as America because this guy's in office, but you get what I'm saying. They're like we're getting it anyway. We slow rolled it in. Like you could have elected that idiot. You could have elected him, 8 years ago. Now we've had to slow roll into this thing. Right? We could be rebuilding by now because he just collapsed the world. Good grief. So, okay, you get. But it flows from this almost juvenile kindergarten fantasy world of utopia, where everybody lives in peace together. We pretty much operate, at caveman level minimums, and everybody's happy with that, and we all share our excess, right? Live together, get along, and shit. And that's utopia. There's a problem with that called human nature. This always seems to get in the way. Because capitalism, right? Free market. What is that? What is free market? What is capitalism? In a nutshell, it's just human nature. It's a person wanting to improve their personal situation. That's it. That's capitalism. It is a person wanting to be able to improve their personal situation. The utopianist is that external, right? The view is external. I want somebody else to improve my personal situation. Right? That's the socialist mindset. Because in the scenario of free market, capitalism operates on human nature. There's an element of work, right? You have to produce. You have to do something. And the reason I want to do something, you develop your skills, you develop your talents, you create a product, you work, you labor, you're rewarded for that. You receive the fruits of the input, and then you find out somebody else desires what I have, right? I have a skill somebody else wants. I produce a product somebody else wants because I'm just trying to improve my personal situation. Then it turns out there's this benefit where that person's trying to do the same thing, and then we engage in a mutual exchange. I have something you want, you have something I want. We can engage in this mutual exchange, and we can each better ourselves. Are you listening to me? I mean, that's basic capitalism. What is evil about it? What is evil about that? Whereas in the utopian fantasy, in the utopian scheme, that desire has to be eliminated. And there's the problem. There's the problem at the core of these failures, all the failures of these utopian schemes. Because, share and everybody is equal and nobody, you're basically saying nobody wants anything. There's just this determined level whereby you have to be satisfied. Now, by the way, if you want to live, let's say 12 of you want to live in a commune, and you want to be connected to nature and grow all your stuff, and we're self-sufficient and we're blah 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 whatever. I'm all for that. That's wonderful. That's great. You choose to do that. That's not the utopian scheme. The utopian scheme assumes there's never going to be an individual who doesn't agree with that system. Somebody might not want to live like you want to live. Oh, this is simple, you should live close to nature, and blah, blah, blah. I would love to. I would live like that, right? The worst part, they don't get mad at me, I'm just keeping it real. The hardest part of pastoring is people. Hashtag just saying.
Yeah.
I used to say, man, pastoring would be a breeze if you didn't have the element of the people. At that point, you're actually not a pastor. But so the problem, you can't get some group and all of a sudden everybody's going to think the same. Everything's okay with this level. What if I'm not okay with that? What if I don't want to grow, my own carrots and bell peppers? I want a salad. I want somebody else to grow that crap. Come on. I just want to go and get that thing. If you enjoy growing that stuff, and that, awesome. You're doing what you love. I don't love that, but I want to eat it. I love eating it. And maybe I'm good at, making little boats out of wood, and somebody else likes that, and I get to sell that. And can I just trade what I got for my boats and get some of your bell peppers? Is that cool, right? You cannot stop. This is the problem. You can't stop capitalism. There's no such thing, like this whole notion of eliminate, which, by the way, we'll get to that. That's not actually a thing. But the narrative of getting rid of capitalism. Okay, not going to happen. You can't do that without force, because it is simply a natural manifestation of human nature. A person's desire to be themselves, to be the best themselves they can be, and to continually enjoy the betterment of their situation, the improvement of their situation. That's all it is. And so the utopian scheme says, no, we're going to have a czar to say what your best situation is, and they're going to tell you what that is, and then anything in excess of that you give to everybody else. And then we assume everybody goes, okay. Folks, not going to happen. Not going to happen. That's why the end of those schemes is always tyranny. Always. There is no other outcome for these utopian schemes. Because sooner or later, whoever's in charge of it is going to have to look at someone and say, you can't go any higher than what we can say. And they're going to say, but I want to. And they're going to realize, this is probably contagious. We need to stop that. That's human nature. So you have to make people cease to be people, which is part of it, part of the process, in order to make that work. That's why it doesn't work. It will never work. And they're very upset that there's been this manifestation that somehow the insurrectionists have come into existence. Newsflash, as long as you continue to drive these utopian schemes, there will always be insurrectionists. You cannot, and I'm using that, right? I'm using that tongue-in-cheek. That's what they call us, insurrectionists. We're not insurrectionists. We just want to be us. I want to be me. It's my life. It's not yours. You don't own me. I was created in the image of God. You didn't make me. Right? It's going to happen. And that's the thing. You have teenagers, you have kids. Life teaches you these principles. If you're not an idiot, you ought to be. If you have kids, you know this to be so. So they're working against the very nature of reality. It will always take force. It always leads to force. It always leads to tyranny. You cannot, everybody's not going to go along. That's why they have to stand this up. So, it's these utopian scheme. All this fits under that umbrella. And then, as in response to the Industrial Revolution, you start to get the reactionary creation, or this use of the socialist narrative, and they start teaching their gobbledygook to try to brainwash people. Now imagine, it's hard for us to imagine now because we've always lived up to this point in the age of machines. Imagine the people in the industrial age where their entire reality had been an agrarian society, what they knew as the pasture. Sheep, cows, wheat, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden you have these things called factories. Never existed. You have these machines and all of this going on. It was like sorcery. I mean, this stuff happening was almost otherworldly. I don't think we can even conceive of what their world was like as they transitioned into the industrial age, the age of machines. And obviously these brand new inventions that, they hadn't figured out how to make all of them safe. They hadn't figured out how to do it as cleanly as they could. So you get these polluted cities. You get people getting their arms caught in these machines and terrible work conditions and the displacement of workers, and everybody's freaking out. Our world is changing, and it's a transition, and it's not an easy transition. And so it was this really sort of turning against progress, which is fascinating to me. The progressives really have always been the ideology of anti-progress. But that's one of their tricks. Seize the language. You call yourself the opposite of what you're doing. You accuse everybody else of doing what you're actually doing. So there's always this sort of reaction against progress. Technology displaces workers. There's no doubt about it. There's no question. Other jobs pop up because of the new industries and all this sort of thing. There are people on the margins that are left out in the cold that can't transition into the new economy. That's why it hurts older people in a lot of cases. Older people on the other end coming in, and you don't have time to transition into this new stuff. I mean, so those are the hardness of liberty, the hardness of just living. But you have people like these globalists, same thing they do now. This is one of the patterns. This is kind of the first point I want you to get. They always leverage suffering and calamity. So because of the transition of the Industrial Revolution, there was, suffering of various flavors. The point of the socialists, the point of the people at the top of this thing is not, we want to help people, we want to help humanity, we want to save them from all these bad things. No, it's this globalist cabal at this point of wealthy elites who want power. And what they do is they leverage calamity. They leverage disruption. They take advantage of problems. I never forget the first time, and we'll get to this shortly, I never forget the first time I started researching the BLM organization, which is not quite the same as the BLM movement or the BLM slogan, and this has been one of the problems of poor, well-intentioned people who've been sucked into this because they don't know there's Black Lives Matter, the organization, and there's Black Lives Matter, the movement, right? We're probably all part of the movement in the sense of everybody believes Black Lives Matter. Everybody in this room believes Black Lives Matter. We believe life matters. We love people, no matter what color their skin is, right? So we're all down with the Black Lives Matter movement in that sense. What many people in that community fail to realize, that there's Black Lives Matter, the organization, which has nothing to do with Black lives. It has nothing to do with caring about people. It has nothing to do with caring about justice or police corruption or lack of accountability. We'll get to that in a second. But just like that, in other words, the technique it's not changed. The calamity of the day. So when I started reading the book, I found the book on some of this organization called Burn Down the American Plantations. What was fascinating about that, and I see the same thing with Bernie Sanders and some of these other folks, they point to legitimate problems. They really do. How many believe that? How many believe there are people in positions of force and authority that abuse their position and are not held accountable? Okay, so in their book, they point out some of those problems. And I remember reading through the book going, yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, that too. That's a thing. what is this thing? Oh, what do they call it? Not sovereign immunity. What is that? The thing where they can't be, the government agent can't. Qualified immunity. They start talking about qualified immunity, and I go, yeah, that's not a good thing. I'm against that too. In the sense of, you shouldn't just be above the law because you're a so-called public official. You can't be sued and you can't be prosecuted for committing a crime. What? Yeah, I'm against that. So I'm running through this thing going, it's a legit problem. My goodness. But that's what they do. They leverage legitimate issues, crisis, calamity, suffering. The problem is then they take a left turn and say, here are our solutions. Let's destroy everything. Then we'll be able to liberate you. So you see this sort of language with Bernstein, who is the heir apparent to Marx, and this is how they describe, talking about the technology industrial age. And this is so terrible. It's terrible for the workers. Why? Because the machines were able to turn out cheaper or do things less expensive, produce better commodities than the workers could produce with their inefficient spinning wheels and hand looms. Oh, that's so terrible. Less expensive goods that are better and created more efficiently, right? How progressive does that sound to you? And he even says they're inefficient spinning looms. So there's all this thing like, no, things should stay the same. They should still have the right to sell expensive goods, do it more efficiently, and have it be lower quality. And we need to outlaw all this cheaper, better, more efficient process. That's awful. I mean, what are you talking about? This is the intellectual height of what it means to be a communist. And listen to this, the price of labor, or the wage, will, in other words, be the lowest. The minimum required for the maintenance of life. So this is his description of the free market system. Okay? So all of you that are in private employment, the only thing you make is just enough to buy your food and maybe have a place to stay. So private industry has kept you in abject poverty where you live like a caveman. That's their description. That's what free market capitalism is. You guys look like you're doing pretty well. Okay? Our problem, we look at our world comparatively, which is this is part of the classism that they put on us. And I can say that to this room, and there may be people sitting here, you don't know my struggle. And you have this poverty mentality of, well, I'm not rich. Come with me to Haiti, and I'll prove to you otherwise. My point is, this does happen. It's not about capitalism. It's not a fault of capitalism. It's greed and unaccountable people. They're the same structures that are in communism or in the corporate world. So this does happen. It's all about the profit, and you mistreat your workers and whatever. Can I suggest to you that's not by and large how American capitalism has functioned? Some of you have probably had that experience where you're not paid your worth and you're all that kind of stuff. We get that. But I think if we're all honest, we can say that's not been the experience in America. If it has, how have we progressed? How do you have your own home, your own car, nice clothes that you're wearing, 3 meals a day? We don't make just the minimum to survive. As you get into employment, you develop your skills, you build experience, you're able to climb the ladder and progress and make more and get, what do you call that? Raises. Right? Has that been anybody's experience? You've worked in a job, you've developed your skills, you got rewarded progressively more and more while you work. So thousands of people believe in this nonsense. Here's the problem. As reality progressed, Bernstein began to figure out that this stuff that he's repeating from Marx, it's not the reality. Capitalism, and he, in his own words, he starts saying, well, the fact of the matter is, capitalism is lifting more people out of poverty than anything in the history of the world. Our standard of living is increasing by leaps and bounds. We're able to keep more money for ourselves and have disposable income and enjoy things we've never been able to enjoy. And Bernstein starts to figure out this Marxism stuff doesn't actually work. It's not actually true. And of course, Lenin gets wind of this and, has to move in and make sure he shuts that down. And essentially boots Bernstein out of the picture. But you have this divide that's famous now. We all know sort of the history of the Soviet Union. Most people in this room, we grew up in the Cold War era. You have that broad understanding, and you have what they call the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, right? So it's the bourgeois versus the proletariat, the rich capitalists versus the workers, the factory workers. How do you remember those terms? Bourgeoisie, proletariat, workers of the world, so, all that nonsense. We'll get back to that. So guess what class Karl Marx belonged to? Son of a wealthy Dutch heiress of the Philips Electronics Company. Everybody remember Philips? Electronics, TVs, all that stuff? Karl Marx was rich. Guess how many days Karl Marx spent on the factory floor? Guess how many days Karl Marx spent as a proletariat? His buddy, Friedrich Engels, son of a wealthy industrialist. His parents' father owned textile factories. Friedrich Engels actually footed the bill for Karl Marx. Karl Marx was a bum, basically. He was a mooch. The third principle of the Communist Manifesto is the elimination of inheritance. About, I forget the dates exactly, but I think about a decade or maybe 2 decades later, after Karl Marx wrote that, his mother died, his rich mother died, and Karl Marx received a sizable inheritance. He was constantly mooching from his parents all the days of his life, where his father's writing him letters saying, "You're a mooch, you're a bum. The only time you write us is if you want money." Lenin, again, son of wealthy people, mother's wealthy. His father was a middle-class guy who rose up, essentially positioned himself in the oligarchy. His sister died, and he lost it. His brother was hanged as an anarchist, trying to overthrow the Tsar. And I think something snapped. I mean, something was already there, but this really kind of put the exclamation point on Lenin's mentality and turned him into a bloodthirsty sociopath that he was. So I mentioned the anarchist brother of Lenin. How many understand that Karl Marx, how many would be shocked to know that Karl Marx was a self-described anarchist? Who knew that? Who knows that? Who knew that? Who didn't know that? Who thinks that sounds odd? So very bizarre, it is very bizarre, that you understand, and all of this is under the socialist umbrella. So socialist is this utopian idea that socialism is sort of the goodie bag side of utopia, or it's the sharing part, let's share all the free stuff with everybody. So the anarchist, what is the idea of the anarchist? And it's the notion of, their motto is no gods, no masters. So the philosophy of anarchism, and of course the message is always liberation. It's always liberation. Never about liberty, but about liberation. It's always the message. That's one of the buzzwords. You know you're dealing with socialists, communists, Marxists when you hear that word. It's all about liberation, liberation, liberation. Never about liberty. So how do you liberate people? In the anarchist philosophy, and before some of you guys tune me out that have been drawn into this, because I know this is a thing now. We'll get to it in a second. There is a distinction between European anarchism and what was traditionally American anarchism. There began to be a split in European versus American anarchism. American anarchism was a individualist anarchy, whereas European style was a socialist, a collectivist anarchy. Nevertheless, same family, same heritage. We'll get to that in a second. So the idea of the anarchist, we're going to liberate humanity by creating a no-state world, no government, and what Karl Marx described as the professional state. No professional state. I want to remind you, you're always going to have government. There's no such thing as no government. If you have more than two people, you have government. Right? Because it's simply about somehow making decisions of how things are going to run. You're going to get together and making decisions when your life intersects the life of another person. So there's no such thing as no government. But what we're talking about is no professional state. Right? I'm sending my money so that you get paid to rule over me. So the way we liberate man, we get rid of no state, and then everybody's able to live free. For the collectivist anarchists, then we can all live together and share our stuff. For the individualist anarchists, they say, well, then I can live by myself and I can take care of myself and grow my stuff, and you can leave me the heck alone, right? Which I kind of like that part, right? But Marx was an anarchist. So how was Marx an anarchist? The creator of the Soviet Union was an anarchist. I thought you said anarchist meant no state. This is where it gets weird. In the twisted thinking of Karl Marx, he said the utopia, the goal, the perfect, goal we're shooting for is to liberate people by eliminating the state. No state. But here's how we eliminate the state. We create a totalitarian state that's able to throw off the current social order. And once we do that, then we can get rid of the need for the state. And he was influenced by Proudhon, the anarchist, and Bakunin at the time was, one of his buddy that also influenced by this. And so here's Proudhon on the side, the anarchist. The red flags, the communists, the black flags, the anarchists, worked together to roll in to overthrow the Russian Tsar. Okay, once it was done, and Karl Marx has been long dead, so it's Lenin leading the red flags. And once he was done with the black flags, he starts executing them. And so Bakunin bails, they go off into Europe, and we see the growth of the European anarchist movement, which is now operating on our streets in America. But Bakunin said, create a totalitarian, all-powerful state to bring about the no state. You're a lunatic. What you're going to create is the most murderous entity the world has ever known, which, in that regard, Bakunin was a pretty smart guy of seeing where this was headed. That's exactly what Marx ended up doing. But back to the utopian anarchist idea, for Karl Marx, what we came to know as the Soviet Union would be a transitional entity. Remember, his idea is to get to no state. It just takes something as powerful and totalitarian as the Soviet Union to destroy the current social order. Because the rest of us, we're good with capitalism, we're okay with the church. He wanted all that destroyed. We can't do that in our individual little communes, growing our carrots. We got to have something that's able to do that. Only a totalitarian, all-powerful state can do that. Here's the problem. Karl Marx is off the scene. For Lenin, the Soviet Union, what we came to know as the Soviet Union, was not transitional. It was the end goal. The totalitarian state, because on some level, Lenin recognized nobody's going to go along with this program. We're going to have to make them. And then what's really cool is I have this mechanism to absolutely murder anybody that I don't like. That would be great, because he was a nutcase. So technically today, we're not dealing with Marxists. We're dealing with Leninists. I think that's important to understand. Because the college kids are pitched the utopian fantasy. They don't get taught none of those people actually exist, guys. You're just a useful idiot fed the Marxist, Karl Marx vision of the utopian fantasy, but actually where we're headed is Lenin's vision of a murderous totalitarian state. You will find, you don't find a lot of depth in talking about Lenin, except amongst the real radical nut jobs. But he's not the one, right? Marx is celebrated because there's that sort of, still the fantasy in it. If you study more Lenin, you realize what kind of monster you're actually building. So where we are today. So that's kind of the, that's 8 weeks of history dropped into that period of time. Now fast forward the Soviet Union. So they're trying their best to infiltrate, and did to a great extent because it happened before we were paying attention to them. So after the Russian Revolution, you have people flee, and a lot of them brought their ideas, and then you had folks here that were able to get a foothold and build connections and bring in the Soviet influence. And so that was all happening in the Northeast. So they're going into the ports, and then New York, Boston, all this area, DC area, and so no surprise, in our red-blue map, look where the blue's at. Okay, that's why the Northeast is blue. Well, what about the West Coast? What about where you're at? Well, because we're one-track mind, and we spent almost 80 years with a laser focus on the big Russian bear Soviet Union, nobody was paying attention to the left coast where the Maoist communists were infiltrated, who already had a natural foothold because of the historic settlement of the Chinese. And that's not an anti-Chinese statement. I'm just saying it was naturally they could leverage that connection and use Chinese Americans to build a foothold. And so no shock. That's why you see that on the West Coast, and you will see a difference in approaches, a difference in flavors of communism. Of course, that's what we see today as they're trying now to move further in and across and everywhere else, where they launch into our urban centers and try to spread out all over the country. But you can see this is historically why the middle of America is still kind of red. Not their kind of red. Isn't that ironic? Remember I talked about the flipping the language? One of the, I'm going to see this guy real quick, my opinion, the most influential communist in American history that nobody knows. Nobody knows his name, and I think he's the most influential communist in American history. Alexander Trachtenberg came over and started the International Publishers New World paperbacks. He's the one that cranked out, and still cranking out, communist propaganda. You can still go to the website and get all your socialist books and communist books and Leninist propaganda. I won't dwell on him, but I want you to get this hierarchy. So this is the thing where I said people started coming to me, and I start hearing certain statements and questions. I heard these questions over the last year. But JC, the guy's a billionaire. Why is he supporting socialism? And I went, I'm dealing with somebody who has no idea how socialism works. No idea how it's always worked. Billionaires have always, the wealthy elite have always been at the head of the socialist scheme. Always, 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 always. It is the nature of what socialism is. Let me fix a couple of education problems that we've repeated for decades now. Communism, we learned communism is anti-capitalist. No, it's not. That's nonsense. Communism is not anti-capitalist. What is capital? Capital is the means of production. Did they make stuff in the Soviet Union? Of course, there was capital. It's a capitalist system. It's not about the elimination of capital. You can't eliminate capital. We'll all starve in about a decade and everybody will be dead. There's no elimination of capital. It's a transfer of the ownership of capital. Communism is not anti-capitalist. It's about taking over the capital, taking over private property, and making sure the revenue is channeled into the hands of a small elite group of wealth, of a wealthy oligarchy. The new thing, who saw the show we rebroadcast on the Great Reset? You should go watch it. You know KrisAnne Hall has a show, right? So she just replayed, I think, an episode I did on the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum, and there's one of their videos out about you can rent everything. You don't have to own everything. You can rent everything. You don't have to have any privacy. No property. No more property. Are you stupid? If there's no more property, what the hell are you renting from? Hello? You got to go to college to get that stupid. But that's the lie. That's the lie. It's not about elimination of property. You're going to be renting. You're going to get that property from somebody. You're paying somebody for the use of that property. They're not saying nobody owns anything. They're saying you don't own anything. We own everything. And why are billionaires interested in socialism? Because it's a capitalist system where they get all the money. Are you with me? Did the light bulb go on for anybody now? Socialism is not a no money system. It's a take your money system. It's a collector. That's why they call it collectivism. They like to get in your face with the language. They like to be right in front of your, they like to hide in plain sight. Oh, it's a collectivist system. They believe in getting everybody together on the farm, working together. Oh, no, that's not what collectivist means. Collectivist means we're gathering up all your stuff, and we're going to have it. I'm letting them dictate the definitions for you. Dictate the terms of this. We need to see beyond the veil here. So the globalists are at the top. I call them the funders. Right? They get the money, but they also use the money. They use the money that they get. They harvest you like cattle to get all your money so that they can continue to expand their system of control. Then the next level, what I call the front men, are the state Leninists. You know a lot of these guys. I'll come back to those. But what the state Leninists, right? That their concern is to have that power. The end-all, be-all for them is that government entity and to be in charge of its power so they can punish their enemies. Hello, that was Lenin. That was the mind of Lenin. Something broke in this guy, and he wanted to use. This guy was a murderous sociopath. He did it a little subtle, a lot more subtlety and finesse than Stalin. So we know Stalin for the brutal murderer that he is. I'll just shoot them all, dig a big hole, push them in with bulldozers. Lenin killed a ton of people. Just did it. He did it in a way that we don't even think about him like that. But this is what it's about, right? Murderers, and I mean literally. So they're the useful idiots of the globalists. Somebody said to me, how do they get the corporations to go along with this socialist system that these politicians? No. You got it backwards. Politicians won't answer to the globalist corporations, the global corporatists, the globalists. It's the other way around. They tell them what laws they can pass. Because here's the thing. The socialist communist system is it's a monopolistic government, monopolistic economy. That means they get to dictate who the winners and losers are. You think it's a shock that during this scam we've been under, that somehow the mom and pop businesses all have to shut down, yet the global corporations, Walmart, etc., can do whatever they want? You think that's a coincidence? No. That's a demonstration of who's in charge. Why? Because mom and pop is a threat to their monopoly. Remember the day when you could go to brick and mortar places, every brick and mortar place that you can think of selling any 1,000 different things. Now, every single one of those you can find in one location, Amazon. There is nothing you need from any brick and mortar store in this country that you can't get from Amazon. Mom and pop is competition for these going and all. So, a couple of these guys, these big billionaires, Blackstone Group. This is fascinating. These guys control the accounting system to the tune of trillions. They run the accounting software for the Federal Reserve. Blackstone Group. You know how many Blackstone Group members are now part of the Biden-Harris administration? One of the biggest donors to this thing. Mrs. Jobs. This guy. Oh, this chaps my height. I don't think I have the slide up there. Mark Benioff of Salesforce. Salesforce, it's a software thing called CRM, Customer Relations Management Software. I wish I had the clip. Go to subscribe to KrisAnne's, our podcast, okay? Daily Journal. We just played it yesterday, day before yesterday. It was a replay. She reran. I think I did it on there because I lost my marbles. This stuff chaps my hide. But I think I played a video on that one of this moron, and he's on there at the World Economic Forum talking about the travesty of you and I focusing on maximizing profits. The evil of you and I billionaire, right? The evil of you and I maximizing profit. Okay, Google Salesforce, look for Salesforce, which is his company. Go to Salesforce. And then he's got testimonials about what his service and what his company does. One of those, I forget the name of the company, was a guy here. Here's the guy's face. Here's his quote or whatever. And it talks about him increasing his sales something like 300% year over year. I mean, the entire website, the entire narrative for his product, the selling point is for you to maximize profits. And he's sitting at the world, and this freaking hypocrite, sitting at the World Economic Forum, talking about how awful and how evil you are for being focused on maximizing profits. This idiot has made billions for a software that promises to help you maximize profits. Hello, are you with me? We have raised a generation of people that are so mind-numbingly stupid that you can't hear the hypocrisy when this moron starts spouting this garbage. Unbelievable, and it's shocking. Like, these people are running the world. Running the world. How could you lie that big and that obvious, and you still control us? How stupid are we? Unbelievable. So these are the guys at the top. I don't need to talk about that guy. You know that guy. You know that guy. Has anybody seen The Matrix? Has anybody heard of there's a series now called Snowpiercer. It was a book. So in both of those, I mean science fiction and fantasy, whatever, both of those books, the whole premise of what they're suffering through in both stories is because man, trying to fight whatever they're fighting, global warming or the machines, essentially blacks out the sky and destroys the world. This is this moron's proposal for stopping climate change, to black out the sun. How freaking stupid are we? That this guy runs stuff. Lord have mercy. So, state lenieness, I don't need to talk about those. So this is critical here. This is very critical. I've been trying to talk about this for a year leading up to January 6th. Nobody's listening. These are the foot soldiers. I call them the fanatics, the foot soldiers, the street level useful idiots. The revolutionary anarchist movement. Okay, and we, those of us in this room, we fell into the trap, and we spent all summer and a year, saying Antifa and BLM, Antifa and BLM, and we placed, the entire thing, we placed it solidly on the left. Guys, it's not. Revolutionary or anarchists are neither left nor right. They are left and right. You need to know this. You need to know this. I was drawn to libertarianism with a lowercase l, not the party, just because there are aspects of the party platform that I don't agree with, but whatever. But little arrow libertarian, I felt, hey, well, the Bible makes me libertarian. That's just it. And so there was this understanding for years, conversations, talking with these people, focus on individual liberty. It's about individual liberty. And then about a year ago, like this whole shift starts taking place. And there's this brand new narrative, and I see entire websites change, entire libertarian publications and explanations and shows, and I start hearing, oh, libertarians are anarchists. We've always been anarchists. That's our history. We're anarchists. You can't be libertarian if you're not an anarchist. Wait a minute, where did this come from? I've studied this for years. I've been in this movement for years. I know they're anarchists in the movement, kind of shrugged off. Where does this come from? What are you talking about? And I saw the rise of this. And then I said, I got to look into the history of anarchism. And at that point, I did not know that anarchism was part of socialism. I didn't know it came out of the same family. And I started digging into the history and the study and realizing this thing has a 100-year history just in the United States. And I'm like, guys, there's something going on here. Something going on here. And I studied and looked at this thing, and I said, okay. Now I got a bunch of libertarian friends and patriots and conservative patriots that are now getting dragged into this movement of the states so out of control that we don't want any state. And they've thrown in with what turned out to be the revolutionary anarchist movement. Well, here's the problem. And now I started studying the movement. And as I said, it's got a 100-year history in the United States alone. It's fascinating to me when I started looking at it. 1919, exactly 100 years before what we see going on now started to happen, there was this massive bombing campaign took place all throughout the United States. They're burning down people's property, setting off pipe bombs and dynamite and shooting, attacking politicians. And then they finally blew up the residence of the U.S. Attorney General. And he launched what was known as the Palmer Raid. You can Google that, find out about that. I started looking at all the thing, and here's what happened. Here's what happens. So, and then what I said, it's left and right. So on the one side, you'll have collectivist anarchists, and then the individualist anarchists on the right. Okay, so I want to be left alone, left by myself, run my own self. And let me say this very clearly. There's nothing inherently wrong as anarchism as a philosophy. Okay, the idea of self-governance, the idea of leave me alone. There's nothing inherently evil about the principle of anarchism. What I'm talking about is the revolutionary anarchist movement, which the thing that these sides have in common is political violence is the only way to bring about their goals. And I started telling my patriot friends and libertarian friends, you're getting drawn into a trap. This is a trap, guys. It's not what you think it is. You're rightly upset. You're PO, so am I. You should be. But somebody's leveraging that calamity to drive you somewhere, to lead you somewhere. Don't do it. Please don't do this. Let me share with you the history, and I spent a year talking to people with very little of still today. This is not the first time they did this. This is not the first place they did this. All over the world, the result every single time was the same. The revolutionary anarchists are unleashed. They engage in political violence, and then the government reacts to make more stringent laws, to target subversives, and to take more liberty away. I told everybody I could prior to January 6th till I was blue in the face. Trap, 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 trap. Don't do it. Control yourself. Now, we know it's a small minority. Even in January 6th, a minuscule group of people. Here's the problem, and Google this, I don't have time. Propaganda of the deed. Propaganda of the deed. What they call their political violence is called propaganda of the deed. It's not about the result. It's not about right? People say, this is our 1776, this is our revolution. That's how you carry out revolution. If that's revolution, boys, we are in trouble. That's not the picture of revolution I had in my mind. I don't think that's how that works. But even that, tiny minority, even some of the patriots, they got sucked into it. Small minority, yes. But guess what? It's always been that way. Every time the revolutionary anarchists are unleashed, it's never a minority. They're not a large group. It's propaganda the deed. They leverage the calamity. They leverage, this event. And then, because these are useful idiots. They're not driving anything. They're being used. The people that deploy them, the people that deploy this small minority of revolutionary anarchists, then use the event to magnify it, to use it as justification and turn the weight of the government against the people who get scooped up in it. 100-year history you can go read. Just here, this does not even include all the assassinations in Europe that they were behind. World War II. Anybody remember the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand that allegedly drove us into World War II? World War I. Guess who the guy was? Guess what the guy was who killed him? You got it. Revolutionary anarchists. So that group has been a tool of the globalist cabal for a very long time. I hate it. I hate it for people that are friends of ours. I hate it for people who got sucked in. But you've been had. You've been bamboozled. They're running a script. They've done this over and over and over again. And if you knew your stinking history, you'd stay out of it. Not our friends. Let me say that very clearly. I probably upset 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 people in this room. They are not your friends. That's not your movement, patriot. Oh, I'm pissed. We need to do something. There's a line in the sand. Yes, there is. I believe in the Declaration of Independence. Every word of it. There is a time. That's not what that was. That's not what's happening. You're being manipulated. Political violence is not the solution. That's not who we are. And guess what? How'd it work for you? If that was the answer, if that's your 1776, how'd that turn out? Does it look like 1776 to me? Looks like an expanded militarization of the federal government being turned against you. It's a trap. Revolutionary anarchist movement. Study it. Find out. There's a primer at KrisAnne.com that I wrote that runs through the history in the United States. Occupy Wall Street. Manufactured by a billionaire using the revolutionary anarchist. So anyway, let me try to get to the end here. You saw that infestation on the East Coast, Soviet style, Soviet communist, and then the Maoists come in. So there's a difference between the communist revolution in Russia and the one in China. So Russia was this established industrial state, so they had an industrializing economy. China didn't have it, so it wasn't an industrial revolution. It couldn't be an industrial revolution. So they had to go with a class revolution. So the Soviets, when you look back through history and their infiltration of America and the East Coast, when you look at their techniques, there was never racial, there was never some race element, some race narrative. But when you see that, when you see these communists use that, these socialists use that, it's Maoist influence. It's the Chinese Communist Party that's driving what you see. And I mean very literally, quite literally, the Chinese Communist Party. I'll go through this quickly, right? This is where the critical race theory comes in. This is James Cone. He wrote The Black Church and Marxism. What do they have to say to each other? This is a guy that visited with Jesse Jackson, visited Fidel Castro, and all these communists all over. This is from Columbia University. This is a screen capture of this guy's book, Theodore Allen, The Invention of the White Race, The Origin of Racial Oppression in Anglo-America, where the white privilege notion comes from. This is Columbia University. Columbia University is one of the flagship universities. Columbia University's School of International Public Affairs, SIPA. Go look at that. There are about 13 to date, 13 from SIPA who are now part of the Biden administration out of Columbia University. So this is sponsored by them, this intelligent talk. White fragility, you haven't heard of this. If you recall, when Chris Matthews was debating the president at the presidential debates and was chastising President Trump for having what he termed racial sensitivity training removed from schools and anybody who received federal funds. So Chris Matthews, this would make him either a liar, woefully incompetent at his job, or both. When he characterized this as racial sensitivity training, it is not racial sensitivity training. This is what they're teaching, the white fragility, based on this white lady's book, which basically says that if you're not brown skinned, you are inherently racist. There's absolutely nothing you can do to change that. You just need to spend the rest of your life trying to atone for it. That's the so-called racial sensitivity training. Like, because everybody in here would probably not be incredibly opposed to racial sensitivity training, right? Don't be a racist. That's not cool, right? We would agree with that. That's not cool. Don't be a racist. So nobody's inherently opposed to racial insensitivity training. I mean, you can make arguments against, perpetuation of, picking the scab and all that kind of stuff. But it's a complete mischaracterization. In other words, a lie. That's not what it was. Well, Joe Biden now threw out President Trump's executive order that said we will not have training in federal offices or anybody who receives federal funds that scapegoats a group of people based on the color of their skin. Joe Biden said, oh yeah, we're going to scapegoat people based on the color of their skin. We absolutely want racist training in federal government. So you guys are probably familiar with some of this on the West Coast. There's Chinese Progressive Association out of San Francisco, which is a Chinese Communist Party front group that funds movements from through the Chinese Communist Party support in the United States. They have a group called Left Roots that is in the umbrella group of various organizations that you may be familiar with. They have this movement and a website called Freedom Road Socialist Organization, or Liberation Road. And if you go to their websites, the Black Lives Matter, the founders of Black Lives Matters were longtime members of the Progressive Coalition out of San Francisco, members of this Chinese Communist Party front group. When you go to their websites, Freedom Road Socialist Organization, Liberation Road Socialist Organization, this is where you'll find, so in their terms, all the narrative is about black and Chicano liberation. I don't know why the word Chicano, I don't know if anybody knows what the deal is with that, but that's the term that they use. So it's all that, it's the racial, right? The racial element. This is Maoist techniques. These ladies and many in this group traveled to meet world leaders, Venezuela's communist leader. There's one, Dream Defenders. There's one in Florida. It's called Dream Defenders. It's run by the son of one of the leaders of the Palestinian Liberation Organization. So they all traveled there to meet with PLO and those folks in the Middle East, because they support the whole down with Israel, defund Israel, Israel shouldn't exist, all that sort of stuff. Brown-skinned people liberation. This is how they term everything. So everything's about race. Here's one of the organizations that they have. It's called Story-Based Strategy. So there's an entire business of crafting and controlling narrative. So they professionally create. You ever wonder why all the certain group of politicians, like, they always say the same thing? Like, within an hour, you have 100 of them repeating the same exact phrasing, same exact words. Those on the right, they never do that, right? We're all about individualism, so they never can get together and coordinate their messaging. But the left always does. The collectivists always do. So they have professional organizations like this. They shoot out the script. They're already receiving the stories. One of the ways that they do this is by recruiting and developing and funding talented people that they can shape into leftist activists, socialist activists. Asian American Advocacy Fund, defending the rights of Asians and Islanders and Hawaiians in Georgia. No, I'm serious. Go read the websites. This is the group that was on the ground this year in Georgia. Hashtag just saying. And you look on here, here's their Asians for Black Lives, here's their resources. This Asians for Black Lives is they're the ones that stood up this group. They come out of the Progressive Coalition, San Francisco. And you can't read that, but you look at all the resources there. It's all about the narrative and tools and how to manipulate the narrative. 25 ways to be in the struggle beyond the streets. You have all these biographies of Black communists, right? That's what Black History Month has become about. It's not about Black history, it's Black communists. I went to a Christian school. I was appalled. We were just giving a presentation as a Christian school. I walk in, in February, it's Black History Month. I look on the walls, and I'm fuming because in my heritage on my father's side is African. My great-great-grandfather was African slave, and I studied all history, run our genealogy, all this stuff. So it bothers me personally. And so I have a presentation, More Than Victims. Some of you guys are aware of this. And go through all the Black history, what I call the Black founding fathers, so many patriots prior to Emancipation Proclamation who achieved great things. There's several Black patriots that had they not done what they did in our revolution, there'd be no America, and we don't even know their names. None of them were on the wall. None of them were on. But all the communists, all the Black communists that you know, they were everywhere. And then Oprah and all this sort of stuff. And I went to the lady that was there, and I said, and I was trying to maintain. I said, would you be offended if I gave you, and I have my DVD, I said, if I gave you this resource, and maybe we can put some great Black Americans on this wall who aren't communists, atheists, and America haters? Would that be okay? Oh yeah, that'd be great. Christian schools. What is the point of even having a Christian school if you're just rehashing and regurgitating the same propaganda you can find in a public school? What is wrong with you people? Come on, right? That's what I want to say to them. What's wrong with you? Why do you have this place? Shut it down. Because now you're just fooling Christian parents into believing that you're protecting their children from this stuff, and you're not. So it runs into all sorts of former communist and Nazi organizations. One big organizer, Rosa Luxemburg, out of Germany, and all this. So, big thing. And now, and I'm done right here. I don't have this tagged on, but you can add on. Now we've moved into the digital revolution, more accurately, the AI revolution. So the Industrial Revolution sort of dethroned human muscle. The Artificial Intelligence Revolution will dethrone the human mind. The End Times Revolution dethroned the human spirit with the position of Antichrist. And of course, the final revolution will dethrone the adversary. Just saying. But now, this is the part where these big globalists, big social, Google, all these folks are now the big globalist funders and directors of this worldwide socialist system, which is about the subjugation and control of humanity. And because of this, in fact, if you Google frontline artificial intelligence documentary, just watch that at your leisure, and you'll see how some of this came about. And it's really fascinating that the thing sparked in 2016. The unbelievable quantum velocity at which this thing has moved is mind-boggling. And there are young people in this room who they probably have no concept that their world has ever been any different. And in fact, this world only came into existence, the world you currently live in only came into existence in 2016. And so we now live in the AI world. Social media is about harvesting you. You don't search Google, Google searches you. Facebook, Twitter, all of it, Instagram, etc., which are on some of these. What you're doing is feeding your food for the AI. AI grows based upon the collection of human behavior data. You're nursing the AI, which they're using as a tool to rule you and control you. It's pretty much already a done deal in China. They have the social reward system and whatever. They control everybody's behavior with the digital technology. Digital currency. For you Bible scholars, it hit me one day, just in a shocking way, how that the digital currency is called cryptocurrency. Crypto means mystery. Let that sink in. You don't know what I'm talking about. Read Revelation 13:7, and you know there's something called mystery, that literally that's the name given to a certain system. And I was shocked. And when digital currency came along, cryptocurrency and Bitcoin, I thought, wait a minute, we've been steadily progressing, in my estimation, toward the establishment of the Antichrist system. This cryptocurrency is decentralization of the money system. This seems to be moving in the opposite direction. This doesn't make sense to me. What happened? What's going on? Is this God just giving us a space of grace? Then all of a sudden, these central bankers have come out and announced and signaled what a threat digital currency is to their control of the monetary system. And they're already moving to outlaw it and ban it in at least 2 countries. The next step will and they're already doing this in various countries, already started. The next step will be to develop state digital currencies that will eventually move into a global digital currency, and any other form of currency will be outlawed, and you will be targeted as a criminal for using unauthorized currency. That's where we're headed. Am I telling you not to use digital currency now, not to get rich and use those resources? No, do it. Go for it. Grab what's in their hands and snatch it out of their hands and use it for the kingdom of God. Do it. But I'm just telling you, there's a day coming. This is what's coming. These are the pieces of the puzzle that are falling into place. This is what we're fighting. Now, I'm going to end on good news, however, and here, some of the solutions, right? We got to keep doing what we're doing. We've already talked about the states. The states can step in. Joe Biden said it's okay to teach racism in these federal offices. The states can step up and say, that won't happen here. They need to ban critical race theory. Maybe that's not going to happen in Oregon or whatever, but you know what I'm saying. It's worth a try. It's what we ought to be moving for. We need to at least be talking about it. If you're in a social justice church, get out. Amen. We have to build a patriot economy. Like you said, we've got to continue to educate and expose like we're doing, secure our local governments, secure our state governments. So let me end on this positive note. Since we're in the rise, I want to speak to all you biblical faith-based folks just for a second. If you're not one of those folks, well, sorry. Jesus loves you, has a wonderful plan for your life. I don't know where you would be tomorrow if your heart stopped beating tonight, but you probably ought to think about it. I got good news for you. Jesus died so you can be with him. If your heart stopped tonight, live forever in eternity in paradise with God. Amen. But here's the good news. In fact, if you have questions about that, you can talk to me afterwards. I'm happy to point you in the right direction. But the good thing about that for you folks that are already citizens of the kingdom, this is not a message of depression and defeat. This is a message of victory. Because why is this all happening? Why is this all happening from a biblical perspective? Let me tell you why it's happening. So why is the rise of the Antichrist system? Why are they seizing digital currency that should have been a decentralization, which actually is going to turn into consolidation eventually? Why is all this happening? Because God is orchestrating events to overthrow his enemies and deliver his people. So whenever you get depressed and you see this and you seem to be overwhelmed with the rise of tyranny and what's going on, especially you believers, I want you to repeat that to yourself. When you get discouraged at what you're seeing, this does not mean stick your head in the sand and wait for Jesus to come riding in the clouds, because he said, occupy till I come. You should be working till the moment he returns. But when it starts to bother you in your spirit, I want you to remind yourself of this. God is orchestrating events to overthrow his enemies and deliver his people. Amen? I am done. I hope this has been a help to you. This is part of Liberty First University, and we're going to keep expanding it and extending. So thank you, and God bless you.
Clark County, wasn't that great to have them come here? That was so great to have them here in the flesh. So if you guys want to hear JC preach, the Underground Church, La Center, Washington. It's 1 o'clock on Sunday, 1 to 2:30. We'll have a short meal afterwards. It's the La Center Church. Just Google it. There's only one. La Center is very tiny. It's 20 minutes north. And then if you guys would be willing to go to peoplesrightswashington.org and send a message of what encouraged you or challenged you for this event, that would help us for planning the next one. And then unite with your neighbors, you guys. The best part of 2020 for us personally, being lifetime residents of Clark County, was forming People's Rights and uniting with our neighbors. And it really has given us a sense of hope and unity. And we're not isolated or depressed. We're fellowshipping, we're gathering, we're having fun, we're protesting, we're pushing back the enemy together in a peaceful way. And we're not wearing masks. I have never had a mask. I am a mask virgin. So I'm very happy to say that. I am a virgin. Mask virgin. Sorry, honey. To embarrass you back there. I see you shaking your head. So anyway, so unite with your neighbors, you guys. Whatever it looks like, unite with your neighbors and learn what your rights are. If you don't know what your rights are, you cannot defend them. So we'll see you guys on Sunday at 1 o'clock.